must be Raven. One of the infamous handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. You ready to climb the wall?
Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at something super exciting. This is the first of the 30-minute missions Armored Core 6 kits. This of course is Steel HAZE, piloted by Rusty, and I was kind of torn between going with this or Raven first, but it had to be Rusty. Anyway, if you do want one of these of your own, I got mine through Hobby Link Japan, link is down there in the description, and let's get right on into it. So yeah, once you crack open everything that's inside the box, this is what you get. So there are 4 bags of runners in here. When it comes to the paperwork, we do have 2 kind of manuals. First off is the actual manual for the kit. And also I will mention, usually I do all the building kind of like in a day and then voice it over another time, but I'm just too excited and don't really want to miss out on anything. Kind of go through it a little bit more thoroughly because these are brand new. So first up, we do have the manual of the actual Steel HAZE itself. So it says pretty much everything about this on it. I'll throw up some images so you can actually read all of the little blurbs for yourself if you want to know anything. There's a little bit of a color set there if you want to mix your own paints to actually paint this kit, but it is fully color accurate out of box, or at least should be mainly color accurate. There are all your parts, so if you do want to live your custom AC fantasy, eventually as they release more of these, you will be able to do that. Hopefully we'll be seeing a lot, if not all, of the Mecha from the game. So popping it open, there is the parts list. This definitely looks a little bit more like your typical kind of Gundam model kit as opposed to a 30-minute mission. Same with the build, which is something that does make me happy. But I do know there's one critical issue in this kit that is fucking some people off. And that is this right here. So this kit does have C-clips for the shoulders. So we're going to see how that turns out. But hopefully it won't be as bad as it looks. This second little manual in here is a little bit of a brochure. I assume Bandai believes that these kits are going to bring some people to 30-minute missions which haven't checked out the line before. So this is giving you an idea of what 30-minute missions kits are like. Fully customizable, awesome little kits. Probably compatible with Armored Core, I would assume. And if you want to see some videos about those, I've got plenty on the channel. They are amazing. Highly recommended. Then it shows what is available from this line. So far, it's just Nightfall and Steel HAZE. There's some stuff in case you want some extra armaments for using with these kits. I will try out some to make sure they're compatible. We've got some little backdrops you can throw behind your finished kit for a photograph. That is cool. I'll try and remember to do that. And there's the other 2 lines, which is 30-minute sisters, girl model kits, and 30-minute fantasy, which is kind of Mecha Knight model kits. All of which, more reviews right here. So when it comes to the build of the 30-minute mission Steel HAZE, this is absolutely nothing like I've built before. This is a unique kit in its own right. First off, when it does come to the plastic, this is fully color separated into the colors that you do want to see. Maybe not as metallic, but still very nice. We've got a grand total of 10 sprues or runners inside of the box, only 6 of which are actually for the robot itself and 4 of which are for the weaponry. So this is a simple kit, but the payoff is absolutely phenomenal. So when it does come to this kit right here, when comparing it to other kits that are out there by Bandai, first off, this is absolutely 0% like a 30-minute missions kit at all. The usual joints and the usual build style you would see with a 30-minute missions kit is not here, and this kit really is all the better for it. This is somewhat a little bit more simpler to Bandai's high-grade Gundam kits. The way it builds up is a little more similar to that, but at the same time, very different in its own right, because obviously, Bandai did have to approach these very unique shaped Armored Core style mecha in a different kind of way, especially considering how small scale they are. There's nothing really over the top in the build here like inner frames or anything like that. You really are just building up the various elements to each of the parts for the various colors and surfaces on the mecha. The color separation on this is extremely nice. The assembly is very simple. You're just basically building up each element of this particular mecha and then they attach together in the end. All of the joints here are more cylinders than anything else, so they are very, very strong, but does mean the range of motion in general is a little bit poor in the limbs. There is an element of simplicity to it as well. For example, you don't get any kind of bends down in the lower leg where you do see an actual piston, but overall still quite nice. Where the limbs attach is a little bit better. We've got some ball joints here, so you do get a decent range. And probably the most unique aspect of the build is the torso. The Steel Haze definitely has that classic armored core, lengthened yet very detailed torso, and the way Bandai actually went about separating this into its small little elements is like absolutely nothing I've built before. It all seems a little bit esoteric while you are building it up. You can see some elements like the neck and the waist, but then they all come together almost like a three-dimensional puzzle at the end, where the bottom slides into the top and then some side parts go on to lock it all together. It really is very nicely designed. Hard to get apart once put together though, don't make any mistakes. When it comes to the arms, these are very nicely designed. There was a C-clip a lot of people were kind of worrying about a bit in this design, but that is just for holding the shoulders on, which isn't too bad. The actual shoulder joint is a nice big old ball joint. The shoulders are detailed, built up nicely, yet at the same time quite simple in their makeup of parts. And the arms are very nicely designed, so you do have a very strong cylindrical hinge joint for the elbow, but that does mean it isn't necessarily compatible with other 30-minute missions limbs. I will also mention the limbs on this are locked into position, which probably is accurate for Armored Core Mecha. And the head unit on this is ridiculously simple. It's 3 parts only, not including the neck. Also, it might be a little less pointy than some people would like to see. But anyway, the final assembly is super simple. It locks together very nicely, and for such a thin, delicate looking mecha, this does feel quite nice. It has some nice movement too, but we'll look at that a little bit later on. So far though, I'm incredibly impressed. The next stage of the build then is the weapons. These are actually separated out into different labeled runners than we would have seen with the mobile suit itself, so I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see these sold separately in future. Also, they are not molded in the colors that, well, Steel Haze's weapons are in the game. They're just completely in grey, again to make them more universal, and these simply attach together. The assault rifle is incredibly detailed, so nice, and we do have a nice shoulder rack for using with that as well. The pistol is incredibly simple. It's just 3 parts, one of which seems to be the little slide mechanism that doesn't actually slide. The right back unit is very nicely detailed too, and again, Bandai could have done this a whole lot simpler than it actually is, but they did break it up into a lot of nice detailed looking segments. Finally, then we do have the blade for the right arm. This doesn't actually fold out, so you do have to build 2 different variants of this. That is the stored version, which is quite simple, just locks together as a couple of pieces and attaches onto the back of the arm. And then we do have the active version, which does have a lot more pieces. This has a nice clear light blue blade, which just, well, the rest of the pieces are just to hold this onto the frame, and that is what that looks like. Again, we'll come back to the accessories a little bit later on, but for now let's jump right into the aesthetics of this beautiful little beast. So jumping now into the aesthetics, and all I can say is I am incredibly impressed by this. This is a very small scale model kit right here that's cramming in a ridiculous amount of detail. Pretty much you've got absolutely, well, I would say 90 to 95% of all the colors you'd like to see on Steel Haze, they are represented here in plastic. The plastic has an almost kind of quasi-metallic sheen to it in some regards, especially in the kind of copper aspects. The grey is nice and glossy, and the same goes for the brown too. Overall, looking really great. The overall detail on the surface looks spectacular. This is molded in, however, so you will have to bring this out yourself to some degree. And overall, what can I say? So much detail all over the place. This is Steel Haze through and through, and this is one hell of a model kit. Considering how little plastic actually went into it, the payoff is stupendous. When it comes to a brand new line of model kits, my first thought always is exactly how big is it? And it's not necessarily that huge, but it's not tiny either. Using the usual scale we use on here, which is gunpla, there it is beside a 1/44th scale kit, which is a high grade kit. There it is beside a 1/100 kit, which is master grade. As you can see, this is a whole lot darker than those sort of kits, so I'm just going to try and adjust the brightness to get it to work for both of those somewhat. But yeah, it's just around the size of a high grade. This kit right here comes in at about 15 centimeters or 5.9 inches. And beside a few other things for scale, there it is beside an SH Figure Arts, as well as a Figma, a Pop-Up Parade, and a Figure-Eye Standard, a few Warhammer models, and finally a Cannon Monster, and a small, yeah, definitely small, banana. Next up there is a look at Steel Haze under a couple of different kinds of lights, because the studio lights sometimes can kind of give you a little bit of a false impression as to what the colors look like. Notice they're, from what I can see through the camera right now, looking a little bit darker than they actually are. It is definitely a dark model kit, but not as dark as I guess the studio's kind of making it look. The colors are very nice, the brown pops. more than you'd think it would. The navy blue looks nice, and overall it's got a nice glossy look to it, and even that kind of brassy gold doesn't look too bad. Overall, looking nice. So overall, when it does come to the color separation on Steel Haze right here, and what I mean by that, in case you don't know what it is the kind of colors that are just from the plastic that you get from straight up assembling this. So well, overall, it is essentially perfect as far as I can see, besides one little aspect. From the little intro aspect I did add in, I did notice its eyes are meant to be kind of in a glowing green. That's not represented on here. What we've actually got is just a sandwich slice of grey in there. And what I'd recommend for that is probably a Gundam marker. That's what I plan to use. Maybe this one. Maybe I have another green that I might use. I'm going to test them both before trying them out, but this is just a marker. If you know what a Gundam marker is, you know what it does. If you don't, it's kind of just a paint marker kind of thingy, and you just paint directly onto the plastic, and it just does the job for you. Just make sure to shake it up really well. I'll throw a link in the description. And speaking of markers, I have some panel liners right here that I didn't get around to using, sadly. This kit is begging for it. Absolutely begging. Every single surface on this kit is just absolutely covered in panel lines. If you get some ink into these, they'll look nice and dark and definitely make all the individual details on the surface of the model pop. As it is right now, you can definitely see them, especially under harsher light, but they don't pop as much as they could. This might take a little while. This is one of the most panel-lined kits I've ever seen by Bandai, and these definitely need that little bit of extra detail. It will make the kit look so much more premium. Hopefully I will be able to do that before I get into the next video, which of course will be Raven's mech. One minor complaint you might make about this particular kit right here, and one of you guys did mention this, is the fact that a lot of the pointed aspects of the head have been removed. That of course is just so kids don't put their eyes out or anything like that, probably keeps the age down on the particular model kit, but these won't be too difficult to point up yourself. The head is fairly pointy, the forehead section, it's just the kind of chin and the cheeks that would need a little bit of extra work, but not too bad. One other nice little extra you do get in here is a little sheet of sticker style decals. Again, I haven't used these yet because I do want to actually panel line the kit, and as far as I know, the little ones are from the shoulder. Not too sure about the big one. About to take a look at the manual, but these are definitely nice. There is a little bit of a close-up so you can check out that logo, again looking awesome. And I will mention that sometimes Bandai does like to actually release water slide decals a little further down the line, especially in situations like this where there's only 6 decals. They'll probably wait till there's 4 or 5 or 6 kits out and release them all on the one sheet, but you're not necessarily guaranteed. It doesn't actually say anything inside the manual about where you actually stick these, so I assume it just goes up on the left hand shoulder, right hand from our perspective, like it is in the game. But who knows? Overall though, absolutely beautiful. Final spin time. So there's that full 360 spin of the 30-minute mission Steel Haze in all of its glory. Visually, this is extremely nice. The only down point to some people might be that it is a little bit on the small side. It is simplistic in its build to some degree, but this is a 30-minute missions. They're meant to be buildable in 30 minutes, but that is definitely not the case with this build, especially if you do want to take your time and make it perfect. Everything about this just looks so good. All the individual details are nice. The color separation is fantastic. Get a little bit of panel lining onto this and it will be absolutely gorgeous. I honestly wish I had a couple of these kits, especially if more of them are coming out, and you will be able to combine them together in whatever way that you do want. This is such a cool line. Can't wait to see them develop on it further, especially when an Ortis. So jumping on into the accessories, and here's absolutely everything that comes inside of the box with the 30-minute mission Steel Haze. So that is the assault rifle, pistol, shoulder-mounted weapon, 2 forms of the melee weapon, as well as a shoulder rack and 2 alternate parts from the back of the hands. So taking a look through the weapons, and first up is the burst pistol, which is the Sampu. This is very nicely detailed. Again, this is just cast in grey. This is made out of 3 pieces, and the only thing that's an additional piece beside the 2 halves is this little bit of a kind of bolt little section sticking out this side right here. Overall, it is very nicely detailed, but it's not very 30-minute missionsy besides one aspect, and that is this little slot up in the top. I think this is actually for sticking it into the rack. They all have these, but it does look maybe a little wider than a 30-minute mission slot. Getting this weapon attached to the hand is fairly simple, and it's just like high-grade gunpla. You just pop off part of the hand like so you've got a hand like a sandwich. This is the ham in the sandwich. You just throw it between those breads and you're done. It holds on absolutely perfectly, but I will mention there is no articulation in the wrist at all on this kit, so it's always completely in line with the forearm, which as far as I know, and as far as I can see, is accurate to the game. So that right there is what it looks like once it's in the hand, looking very, very nice. Just like the rest of the robot itself, it would be nice to get some lining into this to kind of bring out some of the detailing, but otherwise perfect, and like I mentioned, not in the matching colors to Steel Haze. So the next weapon we have in here is the Burst Assault Rifle, which is the Ransetsu RF. Now this is ridiculously detailed compared to what we would have seen with the last weapon. This is made up of a whole bunch of multiple parts, and it is extremely nice looking. Again, color-wise, this would be pretty much exact to the base kind of model without any kind of color. Again, not matched to Steel Haze, but that makes it more universal. And this is just incredibly detailed. This looks great. We do have a little slot up top again for attaching it into a shoulder rack. And believe it or not, attaching this weapon in is actually even simpler than with the last one because you don't have to disassemble anything. This is very 30-minute missions in the way it just slides simply into the hand just like so. That is nice and simple. Awesome. So there's an example of what it looks like held in the hand. Again, this is a very long weapon, and you'd think this would kind of throw off the balance, but the Steel Haze right here is incredibly well balanced. Even with two weapons out at the front, it has no issues thanks to those bird feet down bottom. Overall, very nicely detailed. This is a killer looking weapon. I don't think anything has ever really looked quite this nice when it comes to the 30-minute missions line. Cannot wait to see more. So next up in here we do have the shoulder rack for using with this particular weapon, or whichever weapon that you want by the looks of things. Anyway, the way this works is super simple. It pops into a 3mm hole just up on the rear of the back just like this. It's simple as. It does have a little bit of a semi-awkward kind of opening closing gimmick where you can kind of just pull it open and close just like so, but it's not that smooth. And speaking of not that smooth, I wanted to try and move this arm back with the weapon in that way that we know and love from Armored Core 6, where it will bring the weapon back, throw it into this shoulder unit, and then it'll be locked back into position. But I will mention the shoulder on this is feeling sketch as fuck right now. Basically, if you kind of take a look at this footage right here, you'll see that it's made of two separate sections attached together. These are already starting to kind of stress between the two. This is feeling like it is a massive break hazard. Now, I'm going to cement these together. I'm not going to let these two parts just hang out like this because the strength is not there, especially because it already feels like this joint is starting to fuse somewhat into the shoulder. That ball in there does not want to rotate. This plastic is fragile. I did break a little piece on the foot already while building it, I will mention. So be very, very, very careful. Anyway, if you just want to attach it into the back, it attaches on just like this into the rack, holds on nicely, then you can rotate it back just like so. But that shoulder joint, it's giving me a little bit of jip. Next up in here, we've got the shoulder weapon, which is the Plasma Missile Launcher. Again, looking extremely nice, made out of a whole bunch of parts, so the parts and detailed separation is very, very nice. Once again, this definitely would benefit from a little bit of shadow inside of all of those lines, but overall, quite nice. When it comes to the movement on this, there is two axes of rotation. There's one here and one down here, so you can get it good and up and over the shoulder. And just like we would have seen with the other shoulder weapon, this just attaches into a little 3mm slot up here. That right there is what it looks like once it's pointing up over the shoulder, ready to fire, and it does tuck away ever so nicely, just like that. The last of the weapons then we have in here is the laser slicer, should I say the double laser slicer. So this is made up of multiple elements once again. Now there are two elements to this, well should I say there's two variations of this. This is the closed stored version, and we also do have this one right here, this large nice one, which is when it is basically doing its slashing. There is a little bit of a shared part between the two of these, which I'll mention in a second. The blades are in a nice clear blue. That is what they look like, catch the light very nicely. The detail, again, looking very, very nice. All in that standard gray. And as for the shared part, it's just what this little tab section right here attaches into. But let's go with the standard stored version first. So getting this attached on does require a little bit of changing of parts. You need to remove the rear of the hand, which is pretty easy to do, and then you have to attach on this alternate part, which does have a 3mm hole in it. We do have two of these involved, so you can use these on either or arm in case you want to wield these akimbo. And then this weapon just has a little bit of a peg section underneath, and that just attaches in just like so, and it looks like that. Once again, this does have a little slot up top if you want to use this up in the rack when you're swapping the weapons out. And again, this is the stored version, and to use the active version, you just pop that off. We have two slots in the back of this unit right here. The rear slot, the one over on this side right here, is for the stored version, and the front slot is for the active version. So you just get that attached on into the slot just like so, and that is what it looks like. Looking pretty cool. Let's get it in a little bit of a pose. So first up, I'm going to get Steel Haze up on the stand. Now, I will mention that the stand I'm going to be using today, this is what I use all the time. This is the Simple Stand by Good Smile Company. I absolutely love these to bits. These are about 3 of them, I think, for $12. Totally worth it. There is no stand included with Steel Haze, so this is handy. If you do want Bandai's actual alternative, you can use these ones right here. I think these are the AC6, I think. I'm not sure. These, again, are quite good for display in general. They're a little bit wiggly. That's why I don't use them for the review, or it'll be all over the place on me. And finally, another recommended option right here is this stand right here by Dispay. Now this is handy for the main reason that the bottom section right here can open up and it can store all of your extra accessories so you don't end up losing them. That's nice too. It is available in opaque colors like black and white if you don't want to see the stuff that's in the bottom. And again, the reason I don't use these in the reviews is just because it is a little too wobbly wiggly. Perfect for displaying on a shelf, not so much for moving around or rotating in a video. Popping this kit onto a stand is simple, just a 3mm peg goes up inside the crotch just like so, holds on perfect. Overall, the articulation is quite smooth, quite nice. It's a little limited in some aspects, like the lower joint of the leg does not bend. The shoulder didn't give me any jip right there, which I'm very thankful and happy about, but sometimes it does feel a little bit sketch. Overall, it did work out quite well. It's a very strong feeling kit. No wiggle, but it does feel a little bit fragile plastic-wise. When I say strong, I mean the joints are strong, and that is a little bit of a double-edged sword when the plastic does feel a little fragile. But speaking of poses, this is the pose it's in right now, looking good. Let's check out the full articulation. So finally now onto the articulation, and a little bit of a comment on the build on this is really rock solid considering just how fragile it looks. Well, it looks absolutely nothing like fragile, but it would look like it's gonna break. The legs down here are so skinny. I mean so skinny, yet they do feel quite solid because they are made out of 2 separate pieces. I did break a little piece on the foot, I will mention, so be careful, the plastic is brittle. But thankfully, the way the peg's actually attached just held the pieces together. As for the articulation in general, it is a little unusual, as you'd expect from the design, and I guess I'll just take it element by element. So first up in here, we've got the neck. Now, this is just a simple ball joint. So we've got down and up like so. Well, it came off, so there's the ball joint for you. So yeah, there it is all the way up, all the way down. And you do have quite a bit of side to side. It will go all the way around. So no giggity goo. Sadly, no second joint. At the shoulder joint then, it's just a socket in the body. There's no actual moving parts inside of the torso. There is the joint in question, so it is just a joint. There's the joint in question, a ball joint that plugs into the body. I will mention there is a C-clip here that a lot of people were terrified of. No issues yet. And we do have a hinge right here. That C-clip just holds on the shoulder via that little part right there, and it's doing all right so far. When it's attached in, we've got the full shoulder roll like so, rotation like that. Watch out for those bits round back, and there is the forward and back movement. So quite a decent range on that. Sometimes it does feel like it gets a little bit tight and fused. I say push it in if it is feeling a bit like that. There is the arm all the way out at the side, which is ridiculously impressive, more than I expected. Full 360 spin right here. There's the arm off to check out that elbow bend, so it's not a lot, kind of just like a bit of a 90-degree bend like so. And when it does come to the wrist, this does not move at all. As for the ab crunch in here, it's just this little waist to torso ball joint, that is all. What you get is back, forward, there you go, back and forward, as well as side to side. Extremely simple, but you'd be surprised how much you can actually get out of it at times. The waist joint is pretty much the same as well. I'm just curious as to how the same. Can you actually go ahead and... Nah, they didn't make them that universal now. In the leg, it's got nothing actually into the leg. I did not know this was the hip joint when I was building this. I thought this was for attaching the side armor onto. Speaking of which, that is just like so. A peg into a hole to rotate it just like that. And we've got a little hingy bit that allows it to move like that as well. So that's nice. Again, these hip joints are definitely simple, but they do give you a decent range. There it is, in and out, up and down. It kicks under and out very nicely. And when it comes to the kick all the way up to the front, there it is. And then all the way out to the back, just like that. Just blocked a little bit by this flared up part. The knee joint here is simple enough, it just moves from there to there. It's nice and solid, which is always a plus. There is nothing with this piston right here, it's just a bit of a decoration, maybe a kind of shock absorber. But yeah, that is all you're going to be getting out of that. Down at the ankle, and this is very, very delicate, so be careful. There it is all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up. And we do have a decent bit of side to side as well. So far I've been getting all the poses I kind of want out of it, and it is very bird-like. So last up then, I'm going to be trying out my usual test pose, which does look like this when a normal, or should I say humanoid robot is doing the actual pose. So what we're going to get with this right here, well, let's find out. So what can I say? Overall, I am definitely impressed. It moves smoothly for the most part. Everything does feel a little bit delicate, so be careful. I've got no brakes beside the one I got when I was building it because I had to put too much pressure on the foot. But besides that, this is what we get in the end. And I have to say, I am definitely somewhat impressed. It's one of those kind of kits that's better than the sum of its parts. It does pull off this deep lunge very, very, very nicely, and it looks damn cool while doing it. I am impressed, Bandai, by what you've managed to do with so little. This kit right here is very impressive. So anyway, that right there is it for the review. I don't rank non-Gundam kits, but should I, shouldn't I? It's kind of hard to tell. When it comes to 30-minute missions kits, this is a whole new different beast. It's nothing like standard ones at all. Maybe to its detriment to some degree. If you are a collector of 30-minute missions, there's not much you're going to be able to use with this, really. It's a Mecha model kit in its own right and not quite as customizable as those. But it does win out in the end because it does mean the aesthetics here don't look as blocky, as simple or as full of holes as what you would see with the 30-minute missions. It looks incredible. If you want this kit to detail up and paint, it will look even better, but out of box, I am still impressed. The accessories in here are perfect. The same level of detail has been put into all of the weapons as the robot itself, which definitely is very, very important for Armored Core, especially if you're making your own customs and, well, the weapons were half the game. When it comes to the articulation, it is a little bit on the simplistic side, but I will say what you get out of it is more than what it feels like it has. I love posing this, it does look cool. Armored Core robots don't really do yoga all over the place and all sorts of like zany poses. They're quite real robot-y and do look quite rigid a lot of the time, and that is the feeling it has. It's the perfect balance of posable and not posable at the same time, and you will get what you want. Overall, if you do love Mecha model kits and you do love Armored Core, these are a no-brainer. Get them, they are awesome. They're small scale and fun. However, if you are coming from Kotobukiya where they are a lot bigger, the kits, and debatably a little bit more, would serious be the word? I'm not sure if it would be. Then these might feel a little bit on the small, and I don't know if I'd say basic side, because basic definitely isn't the word. Anyway, either way, I highly recommend them. I got mine through Hobby Link Japan. Link is down there in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Mecha model kit reviews. I will be taking a look at the Nightfall soon. Hopefully I'll get to panel both of these up by then. But as always, I will see you next time. As always, I can't finish this video without special thanks to those who support the channel on the memberships as well as over on Patreon, including Abraxas, Caleb Engelhardt, Joe, RG59061, Shadow Wolf 179, 10 Soldier YT, and Van Fawn.